So, it's been almost 2 years since I left the US and moved to Portugal. Today is my first year back in the US. I'm here on a temporary visit, see friends and family, and I had some feelings that I didn't know were there when it comes to actually coming back to the US, and I had some emotional thoughts. Let's talk about it. So, first and foremost, the one thing that I didn't realize, especially coming back to the US and after living abroad for 2 years, is that a lot of these YouTubers don't discuss these things I'm about to discuss. First, no one ever mentions how much you miss certain things from the US. All of the, you know, trials and tribulations that people face in the US, you still miss certain things. And I think that was the thing that surprised me the most. Having a routine and the daily, you know, pathways of life, you get into that routine, it's hard to get out. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't end up leaving the US when they probably can, if that's what they're deciding to do. The other thing is when you're kind of going through that process and of the routine, the monotony, and etc., it kind of insulates you from some of the negative thoughts you may have about what's not so great about your company, your country, what's not so great about other aspects of your life, because you're in that daily grind. And so that was the first thing that I recognized, was that, wow, I am comfortable in a routine, and I didn't think that I would miss that routine, even though there wasn't anything great about the routine. So that was the first thing that I noticed. And for me, I have a direct comparison because I came back to the exact place that I left 2 years ago, just to try to feel what it was 2 years ago versus how are things now. And also, I just realized that I also chose to come back to this place because maybe a bit of nostalgia, maybe a bit of this was used to be my routine. The second thing that struck me was how much I miss certain things, be it restaurants, um, going through, just driving through certain streets that I frequented. It brought back a sense of nostalgia, gave me a little bit of a buzz, like, oh yeah, I remember this. This is, I had happy thoughts or whatever. But it was interesting that I actually had those thoughts. The third thing that I'll touch on is no one talks about how much you end up missing your family and friends, and yeah, you meet new friends when you go abroad and etc., but you do miss family. And I know it's a lot of reasons why people end up moving back to the US after they lived abroad and etc., is that they want to go back and help take care of their loved ones, or take care of certain family things that are going on, whatever it may be. But family is a big part of our lives, and a lot of these YouTubers don't talk about how that may affect people. And some people may have a hard time being away from family. For me, myself, I have traveled a lot. I've lived in Australia. I've, currently live in Portugal. I've traveled a lot. I lived in Hawaii, which actually felt like another country, uh, to be honest. But it it kind of gives you that tough skin to know that, okay, yeah, I'm going to go back and always visit my family, and I'm constantly going to be in contact with them, due to the technology and means that we have. But it does kind of tug at you. And for some people who are very close to their family, being so far away and not be able to have that regular contact, it's going to bother them. And even just not necessarily having that feeling of, oh, I miss my family dearly now that I'm back here in Florida. It wasn't that. It was the memories of being back in this certain place, in a certain town and city, of my family growing, and the memories of, oh, I remember we went here and had lunch, we played at the beach, and whatever. It Those are the things that brought back up the fuzzies for me, which I first didn't expect, but also makes me recognize that a lot of people have that fear, and I know it's rightfully so that it may bother that person or that family, and a year or so later they end up moving back to the U.S. So that's something that you probably need to get your feet wet first, of living somewhere for a month or so, or constantly traveling, and just seeing how it is to live so far away from family, because it can be difficult. The other thing that I'll touch on is the bureaucracy and how efficient the US is when it comes to certain things. And living in Portugal, there's a ton of bureaucracy. Basically, in Europe, there's a ton of bureaucracy. France and etc. Things are done at a slower pace. And living in the US, it kind of, what's the word I want to use? It spoils you. Plain and simple. It spoils you. Where you're so used to things being so efficient. Online, when you're ordering stuff, things get there within 1 or 2 days. You have overnight shipping. You have Amazon. You have Walmart, whatever. Even just pharmacies on almost every street corner. You can go into Walmart or Target or whatever, and you can go in and pick up whatever medicine you want without needing a prescription or whatever. So, for the most part. But you get what I'm trying to say. That doesn't exist in Europe for the most part. So you have to jump through a little bit more hoops. For example, to obtain ibuprofen in Portugal or in other parts of Europe, you may or may not need a prescription. Or they may give you ibuprofen, but they may only give you 6 or 10. And it's I'm used to buying ibuprofen in bulk, 250 pill packs, or so it's something that you have to get used to. That slower pace of life, jumping through a little bit more hurdles to get to the end goal, but it definitely changed me. It changed me to the point where I have a lot more patience with certain things that I'm still adjusting to, especially the certain way of life in Europe. But I've had to grow a lot of patience because I'm just so used to having things so quickly in the US. And it's a bit of a change. Now, I did, and I still do, even though all these things I miss from the US, I still have the anxiety of, you know, certain things and what's kind of going on in the US. That anxiety is still there, which was one of the main reasons why I wanted to leave. And you can still kind of see it in the daily grind, the rat race, and etc., where you can't get away from it, especially living here. And with the inflation and tariffs and etc. that are making the cost of goods and just the cost of living increasingly expensive for a lot of folks here in the U.S., I totally sympathize with you guys. And I mean, we're feeling it in Europe too, but just not as bad. And yeah, it's really interesting to see how things are kind of flowing globally. But those are just my thoughts of being back into the U.S. My first, not even 24 hours. Everything's so raw and emotional, and it's just really interesting. And thoughts that I didn't think I would have, and I'm just dumbfounded and baffled that I'm actually feeling these things, and a lot of people don't talk about it. So, what are you guys' thoughts on it? For the folks that live abroad, do you have similar thoughts? And for the folks that are sitting in the U.S., are these some of your anxieties or stuff that are holding you back from potentially exploring, maybe even a year or or work abroad from your company or your corporation that has offices in UK or Dublin or whatever, is that stopping you from taking that leap? And it's really interesting, really interesting. So those are my thoughts. All right, guys, if you have any questions, let me know. Look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Peace.